Order. We have an agenda before us. Are there any additions or deletions to that agenda? I see. Oh, Councillor Christie.
If there's no additions, I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, motion to move the agenda as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. We've pre-circulated the minutes of the January 11th meeting. Are there any errors or omissions? Deputy Reeve King.
I'd make the motion to accept the minutes of the January 11th regular meeting as presented.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Our first order of business will be 4.1, Ag Industry Road Ban Exemptions Options. Welcome, Mr. Zier. And anytime you're ready.
Great, thank you. Good morning, Council. So Mike Zier, Director of Infrastructure, presenting agenda item 4.1. This is the Agricultural Industry Road Ban Exemption Options. So just a little background on this RFD. There was some interest raised by the ag community about a year ago to council through the council meeting that there was some concern about the restrictions placed on some surfaced roads within the county and how that limited their travel to their work sites, to the farm sites, that sort of thing. So council at the May 11th, 2021 meeting made the resolution that council direct administration to come back with future council meeting and present options for the ag exemptions for road bans. So administration took that and went through and presented some options in this RFDC before you. Just a little bit of background on road bans. So basically within Kneehill County and really across the province and the country, road bans are implemented primarily in the springtime to protect road infrastructure. As frost settles and starts to come out of the ground, that starts to compromise some of the road surfaces, starts to soften some of the areas there. So typically we see this on chip seal roads, on some asphalt roads even, and even gravel roads. But primarily in the county here, we've mainly banned or put the seasonal bans on just chip seal roads and lower quality asphalt roads, that sort of thing. So the traffic control bylaw allows for that road ban to be implemented onto roads, and it's enforced through our Protective Services Department here. So basically what we did, looking at where the concerned areas were within the county, we did some research on some adjacent municipalities throughout the province to kind of see what some comparable municipalities do faced with the same situation as we have. We came forward with three potential options for council to look at today, as well as any that you may feel you want to bring forward after I've presented these. So looking at the options, option A is really to utilize the existing regulations that you have, the tools you have before you at this time. So when this was first presented in May of 2021, there wasn't perhaps the regulations in place that allowed you to move forward as you wished at that time. In September 2021, council did have an updated traffic control bylaw presented to them that was approved in late September, and basically that had some parameters within it that allowed for road ban exemptions to be made throughout the county, not specifically on ag, but really on a request of a ratepayer of a company. They could actually make that request to the CAO or delegate, and that exemption could be made at that time. So that's something that the Protective Services Department was aware of when they were reviewing this bylaw, and made sure that they included it in as an option for council to, well, sorry, for the CAO to acknowledge. So the updated traffic control bylaw is included in your package there, and to say specifically section 4.1C is where it speaks to the exemptions that are permitted by the CAO or designate. So there isn't really any parameters on how that decision would be made, and that's what I'll speak to a little bit later here. But given the regulations, the tools you have in place, this is going to be administration's recommendation on the most suitable move forward process in this, is that we use the existing tools we have in place. So how we foresee this happening is that a ratepayer would come forward with a request for a specific piece of road that they would like an exemption on. Similar to how we handle road use agreements now, we have a form online, or you can do a paper form, basically denoting the location of the site that's requesting the exemption, some traffic estimates for what we're looking at, some type of vehicles to be transported, the time frame, and the commodities to be done on that. So that's how we've handled oil and the energy sector's requests for road use exemptions, or for road use agreements, and I think we would follow the same process with our ag exemptions and other exemptions. So yeah, that permit, we're looking at how to enforce it. We would tie that permit to a parcel of land rather than a user, just because we do understand that there's a lot of contracted companies that may access the same site. It's not specifically the landowner or their family or workers that are primarily entering it. So that does allow for some leeway in that approval. So some advantages of that: the producer will be allowed to apply for the exemptions to the road bans and increase the efficiency to transportation for their commodities. County staff would review each request and approve them on a case-by-case basis based on, like I say, the parameters that we are going to be setting. Some challenges: there's still a higher risk of damage to our road infrastructure, which is a concern for sure. Anytime you're reducing the bans on a road that we don't put the bans on, we put them on for a reason, is because the road is compromised, the road is vulnerable, and we want to make sure that we're protecting that infrastructure. So there is a risk that increased damage could occur because of that. With that comes increased budget demands depending on the level of damage that may occur. We hope that with this situation, we were able to monitor it a little bit closer, and I think really if we do see some damage, even with a permit, we would look at possibilities of pulling that permit if damage was really significant. And increased time monitoring the compliance of these permits with staff, and possible concerns, I think, may be raised depending on industry that doesn't necessarily get granted the same exemptions that we are for oil and gas, or for ag industry. There may be some concerns raised by them. I'm just kind of putting forward all the challenges we may face in this. So that is option, and feel free, please, ask questions as we go through here, if you had any on specific ones.
Council have any questions for Mr. Zier? Yes, go ahead, Councilor
I
Christie.
guess I'm just thinking of the seed farm north of town here, where their road, if they went to a road use agreement, it's not just their trucks, because that's the busy time of their year when traffic's going out of that yard. We somewhat landlocked them when we chip sealed the road, because the farm was there long before they were, but they've also developed their business exponentially the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. So that road use agreement would have to include the trucks that are coming in. My trucks went into their yard to get seed out, because I mean that's at times you got to book an appointment to get in there. So right. I know the traffic is heavier in the spring because that's their season, and I appreciate the fact that some of my seed trucks aren't legal at times, But for sure, I don't want agreements that would go over a 100% load limit. Like, they gotta comply with the regulations for sure. But I'm just, to make sure that that road use agreement doesn't just handle the equipment and trucks from that yard, but the commerce of what they're doing too.
Yeah, so through the chair, that is something that we're definitely addressing with our policy here, with our option for the road, we call it a road use agreement. It's an ag road ban exemption permit is what it will be. So we would be tying that permit to the parcel of land, not to the specific vehicle on that. So anyone that's accessing that site would be permitted under whichever road ban exemption we're allowing. Currently, that road is 75% banned in the spring. We could look at a 90% ban. Like I say, I think it really is going to come down to what the conditions are year to year. I don't want to say that we're going to give 100% exemption and we have a very poor spring that road is compromised. I can't say that we will give a full out exemption every year. I think we need to address it every year, and I think we need to make that call on what's best for the road at that time. So there will be levels and, like I said, parameters that we will look at, but ultimately it will be CEO or delegate that will make that call, I think. I think that's the only way we can really protect that road and not cause major damage to it based on a one exemption.
Which is also a benefit for that farm too. I mean,
For sure.
it's
Okay, moving forward, there's a couple other options we looked at here, just to make sure the council had all the information. So we did look at the possibility of a full road ban exemption for all ag industry. In your package here, you also see we did a little bit of a survey of surrounding municipalities, kind of see. There are some that do like this. There are some that have full exemptions on seal coat roads and gravel roads even. I think that's a really risky way to approach this because, mainly because we don't have a lot of push to have multiple sites access like we do right now. We have the farmers, the producers in the area have learned to work quite well with the non-ban roads that we have surrounding their sites and able to access theirs. I think this is an option. It's not an option that I or the Protective Services Department recommend, just because it does reduce our ability to control the traffic on it, I guess, and make sure that we don't have unrestricted loads going through there. So basically, like I say, that would be a full exemption on seal coat or lower quality asphalt roads. Some of the advantages for the ag industry is that it would be full unrestricted movement of their goods, and well, I guess depending if we don't have permitting, it would be less time for staff to have to process permits. But the challenges are definitely high risk of damage to the vulnerable roads, potential of high budget demands because of those damages that could occur. Excuse me, staff time monitoring the compliance, and lower potential for the enforcement on that. And again, industry may raise challenges or raise concerns to us that they're not covered under the same exemptions. So that is an option that council can definitely look at, though. And like I say, it is done elsewhere in the province, but not recommended here. And option C is basically the same or similar to option A, but this restriction would primarily be for ag industry to have a reduction or exemption to their road bans, but primarily to the first known ban surface. That is an option I put forward because that is what Alberta Transportation actually allows in some of their permitting. Producers can apply for a permit that only allows them to travel on the ban surface until they get to the first non-ban. I think the challenges with that, or the things we may face, is that we have a lot of poor quality non-band roads as well. So if we're directing them to the first gravel road, that may blow that gravel road out. Lots of times we can look at the road and say there's 2 miles of fairly decent chip seal. We can run them on that until we get to a fairly decent gravel road and direct them off there. So this is like I said, I put this forward because this is what Alberta Transportation does, but I don't necessarily think it'll work in my eyes for our county here. So same thing, there's less advantages or less restricted movement of goods for the ag industry, and the county would maintain some control over the issuance of the permits. And the challenges are, again, higher damage to the road network caused by the increased loads, and again, looking at potential challenges from industry for not being permitted the same exemptions. So these are our options presented. The recommendation you see in the motion is that that council approve continuing on with our current abilities to issue these road ban exemptions, and just kind of reinforcing the ability for the CAO and designate to do that. I've also added here, because I know we are looking at a little bit of uncertainty on how we're going to be issuing that. I've asked that council direct staff to develop a policy that just kind of sets some guidelines for ag or potentially outside of ag industry to apply for these exemptions. We may have, like say, a road. So an example is a house move that comes forward and they can only travel on a certain part of band road. This would allow them to apply for an exemption to that, which is a process we don't currently have here at the county.
Are there any questions from council for Mr. Zier? Deputy Reeve King.
So just to help me get this straight in my head, so are you suggesting that we would rather keep the traffic on our chip seal rather than push them onto our gravel? It seems to me like it's not just a seed grower that we're concerned about. It's a number of farmers that live on these surfaces. So if we're going to give them an exemption to the road ban, do we really want to keep them on chip seal, or do we want to direct them off a chip seal onto gravel? If we've got a good gravel road that'll take the traffic, would we rather not have them there as opposed to keeping them? Like the first policy seems to me like we're going to keep them on our chip seal. And we're just going to give them an exemption, they stay on the chip seal. In my mind, they stay on the chip seal till we get them on a decent surface that'll take the loads. And so is there a possibility of a combination of the first recommendation and the last one, where we actually give them a distance that they travel and then direct them onto a road that is more capable of carrying those loads?
Sure. So through the chair, yes, that is actually exactly what we're hoping. And sorry if I didn't make that clear in the presentation. So the application would request the haul route that they are proposing. We would make that determination if the road that they're proposing can be diverted off of the chip seal at the soonest possible location. Primarily why I don't want to go to the first known non-band surfaces, like I say, some gravel roads, we're gonna blow out a mile of gravel road rather than run them on a fairly decent section of chip seal for another mile, and then we have a better route. So really for these roads, we'll be requesting a map showing the location. We will assess the roads that they're proposing and determine if we want them to go a different route that makes better sense for the standard of road that we have. So yes, you're right, Councillor King, that we would want them to go to a gravel road as soon as possible, but a higher quality gravel road, and that would be where we would work with the landowner to determine what that would be.
Go ahead, Deputy Reeve King.
Second question would be, was there any conversation around speed and speed factor in terms of the traveling on our band surfaces? So I know that weight and speed are both a factor in affecting road, and so I just wondered, was there any conversation in terms of the permitting process to consider some speed restrictions within that permitting as well?
Through the chair, we didn't, you're entirely correct. That is a definite improvement if we reduce the speed to say 60 on some of these higher speed, higher weight loads, then it would reduce the impact to the road network. That is something that we were going to potentially look at with the policy there to see if that's something that we can implement. I'm not sure if the manager of protective services had any comments on that for enforcing that and that sort of thing. Thanks, Deb.
Good morning, Council. Through the chair, I think with our traffic control bylaw, we can, again, the CAO can adjust those speeds if you are recommending that on certain roads. That's kind of, again, up to the, in the bylaw, that CAO has that ability to do so. So it definitely can work in combination with both. And I think maybe in that policy that perhaps we could bring forward that we can define those guidelines a little bit better and like when that speed would be reduced or something that they're in conjunction with each other.
Go ahead. Deputy Reeve McGee. Deputy Reeve King. Oh, yeah.
We'll get it. I guess,
trained.
you know, in my mind, we're applying the exemption. If we do so, we would apply it to a specific location, and all the traffic coming in and out of that location would fall under the exemption. So if it's a seed grower or a feedlot or whatever, people come distance to do business with these individuals, and so those exemptions would apply to them. So then the onus would be on the owner of that business to ensure that the traffic coming to their location would understand the exemption that exists and the requirements under that exemption. Am I correct in assuming that?
Through the chair, that's correct, yes. Yeah, we were looking at issuing a permit for a site. The farmyard, we can even look at if it's a field and there's a producer that wants to run a heavier load for their B train to seeding operations, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure what's going to come out of this. I think we'll allow the policy to speak to all options on it. Ultimately, the intent is that our roads are protected. We are able to review each request prior to issuing a permit on it and are able to control what we feel that road will handle based on the conditions every year. Like I say, I think a lot of communities out there do these wide exemptions, and I think that's a lot of risk to infrastructure that is chip seal roads are put in for dust. They're not put in for haul roads. So anytime you're running any kind of progressive loads on that, cumulative effect of that, the gravel roads, yes, they are easier to repair, but that's also something that we're going to be looking at in the future is the damage that's caused to those and looking at some options for that as well. So I think the chip seal roads are the ones that are very expensive to repair. I mean, basically, if it blows out, we have an option to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on fixing it or turn it back to gravel, which I don't think anyone along the roads or in the county prefers either option there. So the ultimate intent of this is to allow a certain level of exemption, but not carte blanche, allowing some kind of control over what we're putting on our compromised roads.
Yes, Councillor Christie.
Just a comment, I was in Saskatchewan last week and I was on a haul road, and when I turned on the corner, it said any vehicle over 5,000 kg was a 70-kilometer speed limit. And it was a really good road. There were also some very large yards and 10 miles, but there definitely was a speed limit on that haul road. It just caught my attention because we were talking about it.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
I really appreciate you bringing this forward, and, you know, it was something that, like, I thought of too, is we have to be mindful that whether it's a seed grower or farmer on that road, they also have to live on that road 365 days of the year, right? So it's not in their best interest to do anything that would cause damage to the road. So I would be pretty confident in that they would be mindful of taking care of the road.
Pardon? Okay, I will read Councillor Phobes's chat here. That some of the business come from long distance. It would not seem fair to have them come with a reduced load to make it financially viable for the producer or the user. Coming from a longer distance, I would assume that they're going to end up on provincial roads one way or the other. But I think what we're looking at here is that even if we do a combination of A and C together, whoever's coming, it would be up to the, I guess, the company to make sure that they tell whoever's coming that this is the process to get into the yard. I think we do that, or we have done that before with the feedlots and that kind of stuff. Designate a road that they have to come in on. And I guess it will also depend on what part of the county and what the road conditions are like. Because there may be the ability to haul on some, whether it be the north or the west or the south or the east, depending on what the conditions are. So that'll keep the CAO or designate on his toes. Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
So I guess my assumption is that, like Councillor Cunningham said, is that these individuals who live on these roads have a vested interest in them as well. So in my thinking processes, they would likely be more than willing to work with us as opposed to having to deal with a road ban. So as long as you're assuring me that the direction is that they'll be moved on to gravel, good gravel is, and haul roads will be approved and all of those things, then I would be supportive of the motion as it's been designated. If we want to change that so it's a combination, then I'd like to hear what council has to say about that.
Councillor Christie?
Well, I appreciate a road use agreement on an individual basis, because if you have a big feedlot or a seed farm, the requirements are different for each, the size of the operation, the traffic that's using it. But if each road use agreement is specific to that site where you get them off on a good gravel road or whatever, that both sides have to be on side of that road use agreement. And not necessarily a road use agreement on the north end of the county is adequate on the south end. So I appreciate the fact that each road use agreement would be tied to that just particular site. I'm not nearly as concerned on a road use agreement for a field, more the farm site. Most fields you can get into them on the backside if you need to. And even for my farm, we're pretty conscious, we've got land on the Buffalo Jump Road where we come in from the south because we know we don't want to chew that road up. The main part of our farm is on the south side of, we come in on gravel anyway with our big stuff. So, but each farm is individual and has to be treated accordingly, I think.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hogan.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to kind of address some of the points and summarize what admin has put forward. When the discussion first started, the current iteration of the traffic bylaw wasn't in place. Once council put that in place, then they gave us an additional tool, and that's ultimately what the recommendation is based on, is utilizing that tool that didn't exist when we had the original discussion. The follow-up from that, you know, as Mr. Zier has said, is wanting to make sure that we're trying to find a way to facilitate the movement of industry or of agricultural industry without placing our roads at undue risk. You know, as council is aware, you know, even for a gravel road to blow out, we're going to be looking at high tens of thousands to fix it. If it's a good length of road, you're into hundreds of thousands. If you're into chip seal pavement, you're into millions in order to repair those road structures. So you put a lot of investment into that road network, so protecting it is a key consideration. With that, we do know that there are instances where, you know, a company that has existed was, you know, as Councillor Christie has said, was landlocked by a decision that the county made, so to speak, and wanting to facilitate the movement of some of those goods. And that's where we think option A is the better one, because it allows us to respond to those circumstances on the ground. So in a year that, you know, Range Road, whatever, this year might be perfectly fine. Next year it might not be. And we might have to treat that a bit differently, right? So and I think that's the openness and the responsiveness that option A gives us is last year it might have been fine and that road was dry and it was packed and it was held up. This year, because of weather or something like that, it might not be. And we might have to work that out a different, you know, send them down a different route. Because even though the gravel is not necessarily banned or unbanned, we still might not want to send heavy loads down that particular road if it's not in good shape, right? And so this gives us some flexibility to deal with that as we're coming up. The follow-up recommendation is really where some more of the detail kicks in, and that's that policy framework where in the bylaw you've said, okay, Mr. CAO, you have the authority to grant exemptions where they're warranted. What the policy does is put parameters around that. And truthfully, that's a protection for both council and myself as a CAO, is that you can say this is where we're going to allow things. We want to protect the road network, and it's a protection for me in that I don't have a councillor or a member of the public come forward and say, you know what, well, I want to run overweight here. And I've got something to go back to on the policy saying, it's not just me being mean, this is the policy that says you can't do that. You know, and things that you might see in there as an example are elements that you're seeing here under option C, right? But we might not want to go full-blown C in all instances if we're looking at road protection, right? Other things that you might see in there is that, yeah, we may grant an exemption up to 100% axle weight, or you might decide, you know what, it's only one increment higher. So if we're banned at 75, you might only grant the exemption to 90, right? That could be in policy, it could not. You might leave that free as well. But I think that's all part of that development and that goes into those further discussions. Likewise, in the policy, you can put instances in there where, even though you've said, Mr. CAO, you can grant exemptions, you're saying, but you can only grant them to this point. So as an example, you might never allow an ag user to go above 100% axle weight. You know, or in what instances? So if it's, we recognize that when people want to get seed, primarily falls when the roads are at their worst, right? And so we grant an exemption for that. Do you want to grant an exemption for somebody that, you know what, they just want to empty their grain bins faster? Well, you might not, right? And that's the type of thing you can cover off in the policy, even to the length of what roads that you might want to ban. And I'm not talking specific range or township roads, but you might say, you know what, we're only going to allow exemptions on chip seal. You might not grant exemptions on pavement. That might be a choice that you make, right? But that can be covered in the pavement, or so not in the pavement, in the policy. So when you get into something like that, that starts to give the parameters around when that exemption may happen. Is we say, yeah, if you're going to get seed, we want to enable you to do that. If you want to run overweight and haul, you know, a bunch of excess grain down our fresh pavement on the Hasty Highway, we don't want to allow that. So those are the types of things you can cover off in the policy in a broad perspective. And that gives some protection for me, it gives some protection for you as council, and helps us, I think, respond reasonably on a case-by-case basis year to year to the requests that may come forward.
Pardon?
So that
Deputy
policy,
Reeve King.
that policy then would come back to us. We would see that policy as it's being developed, I assume, and would have some input on that as well.
Yes, so as a policy, that is council's governance domain. You'd be the owner of that policy.
Yes, Councillor McGee.
I would like to make the motion that we approve the recommended option A as shown in the request for decision that reinforces the ability for the CAO or designate to provide exemptions to seasonal road bans for agriculture industry traffic.
No, that's the motion there. Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion before us as produced on the screen. Is there any discussion to that motion? I guess my only discussion, and it's just that every year seems to be different. I don't know if there's such a thing as a normal year, but I have been around long enough to know that there are actually times where we've banned gravel roads too, because of the conditions. So I think this policy is open enough that we can take that into consideration year to year, possibly even month to month or week to week if things happen. So we do have the option there, I take it, that if we do give an exemption, we can remove that exemption if something should change in the weather pattern.
Yes, through the chair, that's correct.
Okay. All right, is there any further discussion to the motion that's on the screen? I see none. I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. I think we have one more motion. Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
So I'll make the motion then that council direct administration to develop a policy that details the guidelines that will be followed when administering a road ban exemption request.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Is there any discussion to the motion that is presented on the screen for us to develop a policy to administer road bans? I see no one, so I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously also. Thank you, Mr. Zier.
Thank you.
We'll see what the spring looks like. Yeah, well. Okay, our next agenda item is policy 5-18, location filming policy. Welcome, Ms. Hazelton, and anytime you're ready.
Perfect. Good morning, Mr. Reeve, members of council. So we're bringing back the location filming policy. It is an existing policy. And as with all of them, as we use them, we do find things that need to be revised a little bit. And so we have brought that back to you today. So Kneehill County does recognize the importance of film and television production industry to our area's economic strength. We also understand the need to balance the rights and wishes of our residents with the unique nature and requirements of the film production industry. Our municipality has seen an increase in the amount of interest shown by people in industry wanting to use our spaces in filming productions. This policy, which provides safeguards for the municipality's staff and lands, has been in place since May of 2020, and administration has been able to use it on several occasions. We are proposing some revisions that will put additional safeguards in place and will help clarify this process. The planning department has worked with Parks and Ag Department with input from Transportation and Protective Services. And the one other thing I wanted to note is we currently don't have damage deposit requirements for any of these filming productions. So we are proposing, and you will see the second motion there, that for productions with 51 to 150 people, the damage deposit is $2,500. And when it's over that, the damage deposit is $5,000. We do have a permit fee that has to be paid by anybody that's doing something on our lands. And then, but we won't be taking a damage deposit for small productions that are taking place. So just to highlight a couple of the changes, so largely we've reduced the number of days that somebody has to notify us ahead of time because we have been able to process applications much faster than that. We don't want that to restrict somebody from having that ability. We also have have addressed. Drones tend to be an issue not only with productions they want to use them, but also recreational use. So we have got a drone policy that you will be seeing coming shortly, so we just wanted to reference that in here. If they're going to impact traffic or an area, I guess, hinder business or those types of things, then they do have to give us a little bit more information, and those things will be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. We are going to require a site agreement that does have to be signed for the small productions, and a location agreement that will have to be signed by large production. And so there will be a lot of conditions attached in those that they will be signing off on and responsible for. And then we've added the damage deposit option, and then basically we've added some more definitions to help bring clarity to it. And I just should note too that we do have exemptions if somebody is doing it for the sole purpose of tourism promotion, documentaries, educational institutions, or commercial photography. They do have to fill out an application. However, they're exempt from the application fee. Often in these cases, we do benefit from the work they do, and they will provide copies to us that we can use as well. So that's one of the reasons that we've gone there. So any questions?
Are there any questions for Ms. Hazelton? Deputy Reeve King.
So just in regard to the damage deposit, what kind of damages are you anticipating might be covered off by something like these damage deposits that are being requested?
Basically, they have to leave it the way they found it. And so if they don't, then we would be taking some money off of them, and staff would have to deal with some of that. So for example, or if they leave garbage or those types of things, we haven't had those issues with the large productions. They've been very, very good about, and they've spent far above and beyond this, but it does help us to capture some of what maybe staff might have to do to fix anything that they go in. When we do those agreements, they are bound, and I think Shelby will be able to respond as well because she deals with the park side, and that's where the majority of these happen. We do have site plans. This is where you're allowed to have that activity, and they do before and after pictures and those types of things to make sure that anything that occurs in there is, everything's removed, and then if there is damage, it's on them to fix it. If they don't, then we keep the deposit, basically. If you want more specifics, I'll maybe have her address that.
No, I guess my question more is around, A, have we seen, and you're saying not necessarily, and would these amounts, sorry, got a frog here, would these amounts actually cover what's required if we had a situation?
So, and the other thing I should mention, in the location agreement, which is a contract basically that they sign, there's always that clause in there that they do have to provide or to fix everything. So typically that we're covered by those agreements, and this is just an extra. And it would be very similar on the site agreements. We typically, with the little ones, like often we're seeing less than 10 people on the small productions. And so the footprint, when you have a site that has hundreds of people there in a day, 10 people is not going to impact it any more than what's already being done. And so basically it's really covering garbage and those types of things, which again, we haven't seen. I don't know if you have any, okay, she's good.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Hazelton dealing with location filming? If not, what are council's wishes? Deputy Reeve King.
So I agree that we do want to encourage them to come here. So I would make the motion that we approve policy 5-18, location filming policy, as it has been presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve policy 5-18 as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? see any, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And we have one more motion for the damage deposit. Yes, Councillor Christie.
I'd make the motion to approve damage deposit fees in the amount of 2,000 and 5,000 in accordance with policy 5-18, location filming policy, and that these amounts be included in the next amendment of the master rates bylaw.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Council move to approve the damage deposit fees in the amounts of $2,500 and $5,000 in accordance. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Hazelton. I see you've done quite a bit of additional work on the policy, making it clear. Appreciate that. Our next agenda item, 5.2.1 drone policy. Welcome, Ms. Sherwick, and anytime you are ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Reeve Council. So the first item that I have for you today is 5.2.1, the drone policy. So some background on this. So this policy is being introduced for the purpose of establishing a framework for regulating drones or UAVs, unmanned aerial vehicle use on Kneehill County public lands. So in recent years, we've seen an increase in unauthorized recreational drone use at our Kneehill County park sites, and then as well an increase in requests for permission to fly drones over public lands for the commercial purposes of filming and photography. So currently there is a section regarding drones or UAVs within bylaw 1733, the Parks and Open Spaces Area bylaw. So I've included that section there, and that's section 13 under dangerous objects. So currently the Kneehill County Planning and Parks Departments work together on fielding drone permissions and inquiries and confirming proof of certification if there are those who wish to fly drones at over public lands. And having a drone policy in place will ensure consistency and further formalize this process and ensure safety and positive visitor experience for visitors to Kneehill County owned public lands. So some benefits that I've outlined there of restricting drone flight, safety and privacy of visitors is protected, reduction of impacts from drones on the visitor experience and on natural areas, and then liability and risk management is addressed by ensuring that drone pilots carry the appropriate licensing and insurance. And just to note there that it was moved at the January 18th, 2022 Committee of the Whole meeting to recommend that Council approve the drone policy as presented. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Ms. Sherwick from Council? I guess just to make it clear, we're talking about public lands here.
Yes,
Private
yes,
lands or-
absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
And we do have a note in there just that if if the applicant or drone operator is flying over privately owned property, that they must have permission from the property owner as well. But this is just to regulate flight over Kneehill County public lands. And particularly, we've just seen that increase over some of our park sites.
Yeah, I just wanted to reinforce
For sure,
that it
yes,
is
yeah.
public lands, so.
Yeah.
What's council's wish? Yes, Councillor Cunningham.
I would make the motion that council approve policy 12-5, drone policy as presented.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion before us to approve policy 12-5 as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, next agenda item, 5.2.2, Trails and Pathways Policy.
Okay.
Anytime you're ready.
Thank you. So the background on this one is that the Trails and Pathways policy was created back in 2017 to provide guidelines around the use, maintenance, and inspections of Kneehill County trails and pathways as defined in bylaw 3, the Parks and Open Spaces bylaw. So just some information around this policy. The Trails and Pathways policy outlines which trails are designated in Kneehill County, the standards that are used for maintenance, and specifics on trail inspections. There have been very minor updates in this review. This is just part of the regular policy review process. And the only thing that was updated there is just the months during which inspections are to be completed. And that's just based on when the camping season is and when we see the highest visitation observed at Horseshoe Canyon. Benefits of having this policy include ensuring visitor safety and positive visitor experiences at Kneehill County parks and campgrounds, and then management of risk and liability on public lands. And then we have council options here. Council approves policy as presented, approves policy with amendments, or receives as information. And the recommended motion there is that council approve policy 12.4 Trails and Pathways policy as presented.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from council to Ms. Sherwick? If not, someone care to make a motion? Yes, Councillor McGee.
I appreciate that administration is staying on our regular schedule here of our policies. That's excellent. And therefore, I'd like to move that we approve policy number 12-4, Trails and Pathways policy as presented.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to approve the policy 12-4 as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? I'm not seeing any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Well, you're getting off the hook here pretty easy, Shell. Okay, and again, 5.2.3. Welcome, Ms. Sherwick, and go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you. So this last item I have for you this morning is the 2022 BMO Stampede Farm Family Award. So some background on this is the Calgary Stampede Farm Family Award is given out each year to recognize families that ensure the agricultural industry and their respective rural communities continue to thrive. So it's for farm families deserving of recognition for both agriculture and community involvement. Farm family units must be active in primary agriculture, have agriculture as the main source of income, be active in community involvement, and have members residing on the farm. So some discussion on this. At the November 18th Agricultural Service Board meeting, the board made a motion to recommend to council that Lineweber Farms Limited, the farm family, Kurt and Tracy Lineweber, be nominated for the 2022 BMO Calgary Stampede Farm Family Award. And then as well, we do have the list of past recipients that have been sponsored by Kneehill County there. And then as well, county representative in the past has been selected to attend. So council options outlined there that council nominates Kneehill County Farm Family as recommended by the ASB and names a representative to attend. Other options that council nominates another farm family or that council receives as information. And then I have the recommended motions there.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Sherwick? If not, there are motions to be made. Yes, Councillor Christie.
I'd make the motion to nominate Lineweber Farms Limited, Kurt and Tracy Lineweber, to receive the 2022 Bank of Montreal Calgary Stampede Farm Family Award as recommended by the Agricultural Service Board.
Yep. Okay, we have a motion before us to nominate Lineweber Farms to receive the 2022 BMO Farm Calgary Stampede Farm Family Award. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And we have to appoint, yes, Deputy Reeve King.
So I'll make the motion then that council approve the attendance of Reeve Whitstock to the event as the county representative.
Okay, we have a motion before us. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Does anybody want a break before we go on to tax cancellations?
Speak now, quick.
Okay, I'll call a recess. We'll be back in 10 or 15. Thank you. Okay, I'll bring the meeting back to order. And our next agenda item, 6.1, tax cancellations, our favorite subject. Welcome, Ms. Severson, and anytime you're ready.
Good morning, council. Sorry. I'm
What,
either
sorry?
here,
Sorry for what?
I'm either here to ask for this or payments, so I don't know, maybe it balances out.
Well, maybe next time.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm here today to ask for official tax cancellation. As you know, the ability for municipalities to collect on tax arrears relating to industrial and linear tax accounts has become extremely difficult. Based on Virginia Hill's decision, what the courts are doing, AER gets first dibs on money from receiverships and bankruptcies. So these rolls mostly belong to Trident, and the requests for the rolls above to be expensed and canceled mostly belong to Trident, and they have all been sold. So the purchasers paid a prorated portion of the 2020 levies, as well as the full 2021 levies, and the 2021 levies were just under $100,000. This request is for previous years of levies and then the penalties that were associated with the arrears. We are requesting the rolls to be expensed and canceled in order to clear the arrears off the subledger for the new owners. The cancellation includes penalties of $407,327, which is penalties from the years of 2018 and to 2021. $407,553 in levies, which is portion of 2020 and previous to 2018. And then it also includes $82,330 of PERC rebate that we will be requesting. There still does remain further Trident assets that have been disclaimed by the receiver and handed over to the Orphan Well Association. The Orphan Well Association takes over those assets, and they deemed worthless, but they still do assess them. Once the assets are under the OWA, taxes are not paid. However, they do continue to be assessed. Only linear assets are no longer accessible once the company goes into bankruptcy. The county continues to attempt collection of all these tax arrears from the receiver, and they are already included in the allowance for doubtful accounts. So this is outside of that. Any collection that we may get will decrease this balance over time. The amount of the 2022 penalties to be reversed, if you agree, is approximately $36,000. And then by reversing those amounts in the 2022 general ledger, we're not artificially showing revenue that we won't collect, and I won't have to then do a cancellation for those. And with these Trident assets that have become under new ownership in 2020 and 2021, the county collected approximately $95,000 in levies, which we expect to continue to collect. It also moves the linear portion of those assets to the new company, so we do collect on that as well. And that's not included in the $95,000. So we're just requesting that these taxes be canceled and that the current year penalties be voided. And like I said, they are already have been included in the allowance for doubtful accounts. So, yeah, I'm not sure what else to tell you. I'm still trying to collect.
Well, doesn't sound hopeful.
No.
So are there any questions for Ms. Severson from council? If not, somebody, yes, Deputy Reeve King. And you're going to read 69 roll numbers, are we?
Mike says yes.
Which mic do you want, Mike?
Since this is my motion, I'm going to word it. No, I'll say that, I'll make the motion that council, the amount of $897,209.78 in property taxes be expensed in 2021 and canceled on the rolls that are listed in the motion.
Very good. We have a motion before us to expense $897,209.78 with the rules that are listed. Is there any discussion to that motion? And I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously, but reluctantly. And we have one more motion. Yes, Councillor McGee.
I move that administration is also directed to void any 2022 penalties currently attached to these rolls.
Okay, we have a supplementary motion to direct to void the 2022 penalties on these rules. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously also. Okay, here we go with our Provincial Education Requisition Credit Application, the PERC program, with about 108 rolls. And anytime you are ready, Ms. Severson.
Thank you, Council. With the downturn in the energy industry in recent years, municipalities are finding it increasingly difficult to collect property taxes, often due to insolvency or receivership of oil and gas and other industrial properties. The province then established 2 programs to assist us where taxes related to requisition amounts cannot be collected from property owners. The PERC program provides affected municipalities with a credit equal to the provincial education requisition associated with taxable properties that are delinquent in payment of education property taxes. The DIRC program provides affected municipalities with a credit equal to the designated industrial property tax requisition associated with taxable properties that are also delinquent in the payment of the requisition. In prior fiscal years, the province required a motion of council to write off the accounts before an application would be processed. The program has been amended to allow municipalities to request funding without a tax write-off motion, with the requirement to repay the program if the account is recovered. It is important that the application be sent early, since the province has indicated that funds will be earmarked on a first-come, first-served basis up to the program-funded envelope. Administration is submitting an application to the PERC grant for recovery of all school and DIP requisitions paid on these parcels, as listed, in the amount of $307,174.73. This motion will be forwarded to the program as background for the application as required. If any collection of the arrears is made, Kneehill County will return the amount of the school and DIP requisitions that were reimbursed through the program. As the tax arrears are generally canceled and expensed, any grant funds received should be posted to the Revenue Stabilization Reserve to provide a source of funding for future tax-related issues. Submission of this application will provide a greater potential of receiving funding in the current fiscal year. So I have sent the application in, and they just need this motion basically to say that you approve that we apply for this funding. And then this will cover off all of our outstanding that I've been carrying forward. Since they amended the program, I can now put all those through that, even if we haven't actually done the cancellation of those taxes. So it's helpful, we'll be caught right up. And I'm hoping I don't have to do it again. But there'll be a little bit here and there, but not to this extent, I don't think. Things are looking up a little bit more, so.
Okay, thank you very much. I guess I have a question. The PERC program has changed, has it not? There's no guarantee that we're going to get what we apply for?
It's first come, first served.
Yeah.
There is quite a bit of money in the program, and I've already sent the application in because it was due January 31st, so we're in the queue.
Okay.
We should, I
We're
can't,
hopeful that we're going to get
I
what we
can't
asked
see
for.
us not getting this. We've gotten everything else previously that we have applied for, the little bits and pieces. And it is a pretty substantial budget amount, and not everybody is getting on these as quickly, I'm finding, when I talk to colleagues across the province. So I'm thinking with this change of the program, though, and only requiring that we have this motion to apply for it, that will change things. So, but like I said, I've got it in there. We're in the queue. I anticipate we will get the collection.
Well, I appreciate you getting it in there early because this is money that we've paid the province already, so,
Exactly.
and we have not collected it through the industrial side.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Ms. Severson? Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
Since I'm so good at reading numbers. First, say thank you. Appreciate the work that's being done on this. So I'm going to make the motion that we do submit an application under the Provincial Education Recreation Credit, PERC, for the uncollectible education requisition and the uncollectible designated industrial property requisition on the rolls listed in the motion before us.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us as presented on screen. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. And with any luck, we will get our money back, or residents' money back.
I'll let you know as soon as it comes in.
Okay, very good then. Thank you so much. Oh, there's another motion to be made. Sorry about that. Someone care to make a motion? Yes, Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that administration is directed to contribute to the PERC funds, if approved and received, to the Revenue Stabilization Reserve.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to direct and contribute the PERC funding to the Revenue Stabilization Reserve if and when we get the money. Is there any discussion to that motion? I'm not seeing any. I call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Kind of a little better than the first part of the cancellation side. All right. Yeah, with the good comes the bad. All righty, our next agenda item, 7.1, resolution that Wheatland County had proposed. Mr. Hogan.
Hey, through you, Mr. Reeve, the item that's before us, and I have to apologize for the paper that's in front of you. This is an older draft of the item. So the recommended motion will be asking for, we're recommending that be slightly changed when you make it. So again, my apologies for that. As council recall, at Committee of the Whole meeting, we were approached by Wheatland County and discussed at that Committee of the Whole meeting a proposed resolution that they are drafting and putting forward to the rural municipalities of Alberta. I believe as council is aware, one of the key roles of the rural municipalities of Alberta, or RMA, is the lobby efforts that they put forward on behalf of municipalities. And so when we attend the conference, when we do things like that, we are helping to push forward on behalf of all municipalities and ourselves the changes or the programs or the influence that we want to apply on the provincial government to have them better serve municipalities and our residents. And part of that process is municipalities putting resolutions forward. So resolutions have to go to the regional or the district RMA meeting and be approved there before they're submitted to the entire body at the conventions each year. So this is part of that process, and Wheatland County is working on a resolution regarding landowners' resources and abilities and rights as they pertain to contractual agreements with oil and gas companies. And so what they're seeing is similar to what we've seen in Kneehill County, where some companies, definitely not all of them, but some actors have chosen to undertake negotiations in a way that might not be deemed as being completely in good faith or strong-arm tactics, or trying to unilaterally alter the terms of a pre-existing contract. And we've seen that, some of our residents have reported that happening through negotiated land payments and things of that nature. So this has been an issue for landowners both within the county and outside, and to help alleviate that, Wheatland County is putting a resolution forward. They did have a draft resolution that was included in Council's Committee of the Whole agenda and discussed there. However, they have indicated that they would like to make some alterations and tweaks to that draft motion The one that is a draft is the one that's contained in your package here for reference, but that will not be the finalized version of the resolution as they take that through additional reviews, administrative and legal, for example. So what we're proposing, or what we're recommending, is that we support the Wheatland County resolution regarding ensuring landowners remain whole in contractual agreements with oil and gas companies in principle. And what that means is that you're saying, as a principle, we're going to support this, but we're withholding final complete support until we see the actual wording of the resolution and things in there. So it's building in a little bit of protection. It gives Wheatland County the knowledge that they do have backing for this, but it's not the 100% commitment yet. It's just saying that, yeah, we like the idea, so we're on board, but we need to see the final version before we fully commit. And so that's the in principle component. Likewise, as we would be seconding this motion, as those tweaks or changes come in, we would likely have input into that. And so what's before you is a continuation from the past committee of the whole meeting and recommending that in principle we support this motion or this resolution put forward by Wheatland County.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hogan. Are there any questions for Mr. Hogan? I guess I had a conversation, well, I know I had a conversation with Reeve Link from Wheatland County shortly after we had our committee of the whole meeting, and she stated that they were really looking forward to putting this resolution together for the March RMA convention, because we would sure like to put some focus on the landowners' rights, their lease payments that are not being fulfilled. But after looking into it a little deeper, they thought maybe they would wait until the November RMA convention and get all their ducks in a row, I guess, so to speak, just to make sure that the resolution was stated correctly. So is there any other questions or discussion? Deputy Reeve King?
Certainly, from my point of view, I can't see why we wouldn't be supportive of a resolution headed in this direction. Having just sat through a hearing and realizing the amount of effort and time and money that goes into it. And so I think that we need to support our ag producers who are dealing with these oil and gas companies. So certainly, if you hear me, I'm very supportive of going in this direction.
Yes, Councillor McGee.
I agree with your sentiment there. I know that there are some farmers who've had good relationships with some of the companies, and as a protection to them as well, I think the other people need to see that we mean business, because how do the good people stay good if it isn't done equally fair as well? So both for the principle of companies and as well as for our landowners, I would like to make that motion that we support the Wheatland County resolution to rural municipalities of Alberta regarding ensuring landowners remain whole in contractual agreements with oil and gas companies in principle.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us as presented on screen. And it's, I would also like to give my support to this resolution. It's really too bad that there are regulations where lease payments are supposed to be current, and those are not being enforced. So if we can bring the province's attention to those regulations, I think that would be a bonus for our ratepayers. Okay, is there any discussion to the motion? Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
Yeah, I just also, in light of what Councillor McGee has said, I do want to acknowledge that not all companies are bad actors. We have some very good companies that are working in our area, and the unfortunate spin-off of what's happening with some of the negotiations that haven't been carried out in good faith is that they're having trouble getting access. And farmers are reluctant to provide access based on what's happened to them. And so this not only helps our farm farmers in their negotiations with the oil companies that they're having problems with, but it also helps the good companies who are trying to negotiate in good faith with farmers to give them some backing and support when they go out to deal with farmers. So I acknowledged where you're coming from. There are some really good companies out there, so.
All righty, we have a motion before us to support in principle. Is there any other discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. All right, our next agenda item will be Policy 3-1, Council Compensation and Expense Reimbursement. Mr. Hogan, you doing this one?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I am.
All righty, anytime you're ready.
All right. The item that's before you is an update to Council Policy 3-1, which is a council compensation and expense reimbursement policy. So this was updated previously, and this in conjunction with some other policies that were altered, is it left a little bit of a gap that we've identified administratively, and we're putting forward for council's consideration that the policy be amended to include attendance at a number of conferences as automatic approvals. As council's aware, your current process is that for any member to attend a conference or an event, there is a required motion and approval from the remainder of council to attend that event. That's done as an accountability and a cost control mechanism. However, when we look at some of these, there are conferences that in the past traditionally have always been approved. And so what we're suggesting is that we codify those in the policy to as conferences or events that you would not need to come back and seek the approval of council. Through this policy, you would already have that approval. And so the ones that we're putting in there are ones that are tied directly to committees and boards that you sit on as member councils. So as an example, the top two is if you're a member of the Agricultural Service Board, in the past, you've always been approved to go to the Provincial ASB conference and to the summer tour. So currently is you would technically need to come back and ask council for that approval for you to attend. And what we're suggesting is that council's most likely going to say yes to this, you always have in the past, that this is a candidate to codify within the policy that you don't need to come back and ask if you're a member of ASB, it's assumed you're going to attend those. Similar to all of the ones on the list. So for Kneehill Housing Corporation, if you're the two members that sit on that, then you'd automatically be approved to go to Alberta Seniors and Community Housing Association. Again, these are events that have happened in the past. They're already included in the yearly budget each year in anticipation that they will be attended. And so what we're recommending for council's consideration, because policy is your domain, that is where you get to govern and where you're responsible for governing, is that you consider including those in the policy, the list that we've identified, the draft policy is attached, so that would just create some efficiencies for events that you're approving anyway.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hogan. Are there any questions from council for Mr. Hogan? Nope, doesn't look like it. What's council's wish? Yes, Councillor McGee.
I really value this opportunity. I think it's very important that if we're going to sit on these various groups that we have opportunities to participate with or have responsibility to participate with, that we are well prepared with good knowledge and current information, and I think that best serves everybody that way. And therefore, I'd like to make the motion that council approve policy number 3-1, council compensation and expense reimbursement as presented.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion before us to approve policy 3-1 as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? Not seeing any, I will call the question. All those in favor? And that is also carried unanimously. Alrighty, our next agenda item, 7.3, Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association, SAEWA. Mr. Hogan, I take it, your turn again.
Believe it is. Through you, Mr. Chair. The item before you is from the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association, or SAEWA. This is an association that the county has been a part of in the past for many years. They're looking at developing a facility to basically divert material from landfills to this facility where it would be converted into waste. Or sorry, you're not going to convert waste into waste. You're going to convert waste into energy. Yes, I'll get that right. So what each year the members in this are sent a bill on a per capita basis for their participation in that. We've received that invoice for 2022. However, council direction to include that in the budget or to pay that was made in 2021 for the 2021 year. And so we've got this in the, we've got a recommendation that council direct us to include this membership in the operating budget. As council is aware, you're about to embark on discussions of that document, but before it's finalized, that we would include this in that total, and that would be direction for us to continue to be a member and incur the fee that is associated with that membership. For reference, that's approximately $2,650 per year, and with that, we would have the authority to proceed with payment of that invoice. The other options that are available to council is we can choose to explore what leaving the membership looks like. If there's a time frame involved or anything like that, that's open to council as well, but it is ultimately your choice as to which direction we go on this.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hogan. Are there any questions from council for Mr. Hogan? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
Just in terms of being newer to this, what I'm understanding is this is a nonprofit organization, but I'm just curious what benefits the county receives from being a member of this organization.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Cunningham, the overall benefit is one that's general in nature, and it's mostly related to if the more material that can be diverted from landfills, the longer those landfills are going to be operational for. That means there's less cost with developing new landfills. There's really less cost in developing the new ones because they're lasting longer. And so the more that can be diverted from them, the more overall benefit there is. But really at this point, the studies that they're doing in this is general in nature. And so if there's a direct, say, specific benefit to the Torrington landfill as an example, there isn't one right now. There may be one in the future, but that's, again, it's a general element designed at across the board, reducing the amount of material going into landfills.
Are there any other questions from council for Mr. Hogan? Yes, Councillor Cunningham.
So is there, is this a provincially funded program, or do they receive money from other government entities?
Through Mr. Chair, I would have to follow up I'd have to pose those questions to see the overall funding breakdown. There are memberships that municipalities pay like ourselves. Previously, I'd say up until 2 or 3 years ago, those were paid on our behalf by the Drumheller and District Solid Waste Association, of which we're a member. However, that organization opted to discontinue their payment of that and leave that to individual municipalities to decide whether or not they would proceed with their membership or not. As to other sources of funding, that's a question I would need to pose.
This initiative has been in the works for a number of years, and I'm saying quite a number of years. It has been mostly funded through municipal requisitions such as this. They're just trying to get their trying to pick the right word here. trying to get the facility up and running and trying to figure out what the costs are gonna be and what benefits there will be. There will be benefits in the, as Mr. Hogan stated, as to the landfills that are currently being operated. But if you can turn waste into energy and actually have a saleable product at the end, there's also a benefit that way. But I'm not all that sure how much longer this is going to take, and I'm not sure they know either, but regardless of. Are there any other questions for, yes, Councillor Cunningham?
Promise this will be the last one. So they're building a facility, is that what I'm understanding? And then if that's, or that's the plan, okay.
That's the goal.
So when this facility is built, then is that continuing as a nonprofit entity, or will it be a privately owned business?
I do believe the thoughts are is to have it as a municipal-owned infrastructure. I might be wrong, but I'm thinking that's the way it's supposed to go. And whether or not it'll be profitable, I think that is the issue right now. Depends on how much they can sell the energy for.
Through
Hogan?
Mr. Reeve, that's my understanding as well.
Yeah. So it's twofold. One is to divert waste, and the other one is to actually produce energy and a saleable product. Whether or not it'll be break even, money ahead, or money loss, there's still studying that. Are there any other questions for Mr. Hogan on this? Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
So I'm just following up. So the Drumheller Solid Waste Management Association has withdrawn their participation in SAEWA. So there's no, my understanding would be there's no intent on their part to ship waste to this facility if and when it would be built. Am I correct in that assumption?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor King, I don't know if that's the intent of the Drumheller and District Solid Waste Association or not. My understanding of their decision is that when they were looking at their budget pressures, it was more a determination that individual municipalities could make this call on their own behalf, rather than Drumheller and District Solid Waste Association making it for them. So I think that was the basis for their decision on that front. What their intent is around shipping waste to it or not, I can't speak to.
Just
go
a
ahead.
quick follow-up.
Deputy Reeve King.
So we're not sure whether we would actually be within this area shipping waste to that facility if and when it's built. So we have no idea what the intent, and of course, unfortunately, Councillor Penner is not here today.
Yeah, I think the intent through the chair is that we would be within that area, and that's the membership that they're canvassing to do that. Ultimately, the choice, to say that this is a construction project is way further than this actually is. This is still very much in a figuring things out stage.
I don't know if I can shed any more light on it, but I know Drumheller Solid Waste used to have a membership which included all the municipalities that use Drumheller Solid Waste. So when they pulled back their funding, that became the responsibility of the municipalities, whether or not they wanted to be part of this. I think I've got that right. Yes, Councillor McGee.
I just wanted to add to that conversation. I was able to sit on a meeting once as the alternate, and that was quite a while ago before they had this motion forward. But the concept at that time in the conversation was, yes, they would likely participate when it's successful, but they didn't feel that it was something that they should be speaking on everyone else's behalf, and we would have our own choices of whether or not to participate in it. So I don't see it as a problem about whether or not Drumheller Solid Waste would be utilizing it. I think their intent is to. From that conversation, like I said, it wasn't a passed motion at that time, but that was their principle at the time that I was at that meeting.
Okay, are there any other questions from the council for Mr. Hogan? If not, would someone care to make a motion? Yes, Councillor McGee.
I move that we direct administration to include the Southern Alberta Energy from Waste Association membership in the operating budget. Excuse me, I almost lost a tongue tie there.
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion to direct administration to include SAEWA membership in our operating budget. Is there any discussion to that motion? Councillor Christie.
Just a comment that I appreciate the research into getting something out of waste rather than just bury it. So I appreciate that somebody's looking at it anyway.
Okay, is there any other discussion to the motion? I'm not seeing any, so I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. All righty, our next agenda item. Shoot, I lost, oh, here we go. Kneehill Medical Services Recruitment and Retention Terms of Reference. That's 7.4 on our agenda. Mr. Hogan, anytime you're ready.
To council through the chair, this is the, as council's aware, the Kneehill Regional Partnership has been reviewing the terms of reference for the what is currently called the Doctor Recruitment and Retention Task Force. There was some concern over the structure of that entity, some of the operations, and that prompted the municipalities to forward this to the Kneehill Regional Partnership as an item to review and look at those terms of reference. Currently, that task force is actually a subcommittee of the Kneehill Regional Partnership, and so that is the body that technically this group would report back to. As part of that review, the Kneehill Regional Partnership looked at the terms of reference, had a discussion around what they wanted to accomplish with the task force or what the goals of it should be, and in determining that along the way also issued some questionnaires to the municipal members. Council will remember twice that there was input sought from our council. That was a similar process to all the other 5 municipal members, as well to the current Doctor Recruitment and Retention Task Force itself. From that feedback, the partnership developed the proposed terms of reference that are attached to this item. And so what they do is the proposed terms of reference clarifies a number of things regarding the operation of the task force, the structure of it, as well as what scope. So what activities would they deem to be within the scope of the task force, and what other ones would they say, no, this isn't a role for the task force to play. So as they went through that, there's a few things that came up. One that they've done is, one of the broad discussions was trying to determine who the group was actually focused at. And there was some discussion among the members as, would this only be doctors? Would this be all medical services? Who would apply in here? The proposed terms of reference and what was put forward for consideration is that would really be up to the committee or the task force itself to define. However, the focus, the stated focus would be on doctors and nurses. So as that goes forward, that was a bit of a clarification, but there is still some open